it doesn't take a genius to see the repair work here. Which one of these things doesn't belong?
¿No quieres?
Ahí está, tómate cuenta como May. Atrás mío, atrás mío. No, agarrarle la pata, pues.
No, le estoy metiendo el hueco ya para que ella no salga. Ya, vengan, vengan, vengan.
It's incredible. And then look at the curvature. This was the corner, so they curved it around.
Yera, sal de ahí para tomarle mamá foto. Sal de ella, quiero que salga la roca. Yera, sal de ahí. ¿Qué cosa quieres?
I saw somebody trying to touch that one like when it was way up here. That just took off sprinting. Yeah. I was like, nobody dripping on it.
It's very rough to the touch. Almost as if it was hit with rain while it was still wet. It pitted it. It didn't need to be smooth. It was already gigantic and tough and strong. This joinery already shows that it was pretty perfect. It didn't need to be smoothed out to be perfect. As you can see, this line here, how it goes all the way over. But if you look closely, you can see how it's flat right here. What kind of chisel makes stone flat like that? Like a putty knife dragging the mud across a sheetrock wall. How do you do that with a chisel? You can't. It just, when you hit it, even though it might make it straight, it impacts it and breaks it. I think another point to this being rough to the touch, it's dimpled, but in a reverse way. It's pimpled, I guess you would call it. I don't know what the terminology for that would be. If this was stone and chisel work, where are the chisel marks at? One theory is that they used to use rocks of equal material, and they would just smack it over and over again to beat it down into the shape. And they just threw manpower at it. How can you get more than a dozen guys around one of these stones? 2 dozen? You certainly can't throw 5,000 people at one stone. I had to wait for the people to clear out to show you this. 2 videos ago I was on the other side of this. This is the exit. I don't have a flashlight with me. And it's probably a critter cave by this point. But you can see that this was maybe a drain ditch. Maybe, although it seems to go downhill from here, here being the outside, the other side potentially being the inside. Who knows? Who knows what that was? Maybe they shot fireballs out of it. I don't have a theory for that one just yet. Some people call this a temple. But if you look throughout history, even today, people only spend about 10% or less on their religion, They're false gods, whatever you want to call it. And even Christians, I hate to say it, but even Christians don't spend their time and efforts in serving God. So why would this gigantic complex be a temple? Everything in here is a temple. They've got 12 Temple of the Suns here in Peru. No offense to the culture. I love the Peruvians. They're great people. But not everything could be a temple. This was a fortress to keep out the bad guys, in my opinion. Maybe we'll see more evidence of that. Scattered stones everywhere. Again, more evidence of a great explosion. I don't really like the word cataclysm, but everything here blew up. It was once nice and orderly. Looking at these blocks here tell us that it was orderly. And then eventually came disorder. We saw some similar stones at Machu Picchu. They were more uniform, not as polygonal. I mentioned to our tour guide that briefly touched on my theory. And his answer was that, well, same civilization, different methods, different time periods. But there's a stark contrast between the methods. Up here is evidence where they attempted to, probably Incan, attempted to make some repair work there. And that chisel, I can see the chisel mark from here. I'm about 20 meters, maybe not that far, maybe 10 meters away. And you can see the chisel marks. I'm going to zoom in here so the camera's going to go wonky, but bear with me. Right there. Smaller, much smaller. Rougher. That was the Incans attempting to match what was already existing. It just didn't work. I mean, it worked. It's held up. It didn't match, though. More evidence of this being two different civilizations in two different time periods. Okay, zooming back out here. What's interesting to note is that a civilization as advanced as this, to be able to build this, must have built it for protection, for security. But if they were this advanced, what were they securing themselves from? That's a scary thought. Some people say that there was a method of taking hard stone and using some sort of sound generation to make it soft. I know my theory is outlandish, but come on, really? I mean, let's keep it in the real world here, where physics is physics. All things being equal, the simplest solution is probably the right one. Isn't that a scientific theory? Isn't that a scientific thing? So if that's the case, if you want to invoke that, let's say that the earth is, just like the Bible says, is 7,000 years old. And when the earth was in its infancy, just like, okay, here's a good example. Here's a good comparison. Dinosaur Valley State Park. They have dinosaur tracks. And now what was once mud is now hard. When the earth was young, the mud was soft. The rock was soft like mud. And making these big things were a little easier. Carving them to fit. And it's okay that scientists will never hear my theory and never agree. The Bible says somewhere something to the effect of, he does this thing to confound the wise. Wise in their own minds. Here's something interesting. What does that look like there? That porous, with the holes. It's porous. How'd they chisel around that? You know what it looks like to me? Air bubbles in clay. The rain's eroded it probably more so. You can see the repair work up there. That's the best ink and repair work I've seen yet. But the chisel marks are easily identifiable even from here. And again here. One thing you'll notice too, in the original structure, steps are always one piece, made into the rock. This is concrete, added later. Look at that. That's probably ink and repair work, but this step right here is carved into the rock, or carved. You know, I don't need to use that word. I don't believe it was carved. I believe it was shaped out of the stone. So you can see these steps behind, being that these are smaller individual rocks, easy to be moved by man. One man can pick up probably each one of those stones and move it by himself. The mortar in between, that's not the earlier period. That's later period inking. The Bible says there was giants in those days. Don't you think it would take a giant to lift these? And you're probably thinking, Jeff, you're crazy. It's okay. It takes somebody a little crazy to fathom how this could come to be in the manner that matches the Bible. That's okay. I'll be crazy. Just look at that thing. Just look at that stone. That is huge. If that were 10 feet back into that wall, into the side of this hill, whatever this is, it'd be bigger than a car. And of course it's incredibly more dense, so how do you lift that? What if I can find a giant fingerprint? Been very blessed. There hasn't been a lot of tour traffic. You'll probably hear me talking about this stuff in my own ideas and theories, and they probably think I was crazy, but you know what? It's okay. Incan period. Looks like a grand entrance. And of course you see the two giant entryway stones there. Probably had a lintel at one time. It's probably since blown off. It's probably laying 2,000 meters or so over there. I'm going to take a minute and capture the surrounding countryside. It's beautiful. You don't see the mountains like we saw in Ollantaytambo and Aguascalientes, because we're at the top of the mountain here, 12,000 feet.